It's the end of the NBA season. You're the fan of a team who we won't say is trash. Let's just say they have a severe allergic reaction to winning basketball games. So despite the year ending off with a bang, your excitement is just starting to peak. Because frankly, your team is nowhere close to being ready to contend in the playoffs. Your team is in a rebuild. And for teams in their Bob the Builder era, the offseason is their true postseason. Who are we going to sign in free agency to fill out our roster? What player are we going to trade for that can provide some value to our team in a bigger role? And most importantly, which young prospect are we going to select in the NBA draft that will be the new cornerstone of our franchise? It is an exhilarating time because you can finally see the potential path your team can take to finally climbing out of the trash can and firmly cementing themselves as a possible contender. Oh, if we draft this player with this pick and they can trade for this person, I know they will this player to a max deal and pull him away from this team. I just know he will be able to do this on. No, he won't. You know why? Because the draft is a Ponzi scheme, NBA trades make no sense, and your front office is not good. And we made our very own stat to prove it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sweatshop. Now I already know what you are thinking. Random YouTuber makes a random stat and automatically thinks it validates his argument. I understand. So let's make a pact, dear viewer. Stick with me for one more minute so I can briefly explain how we made this stat, and if you still think it's stupid after that, then you are 100% free to dislike the video, unsubscribe, leave the most heinous comment you can think of, and report the channel. If you think there is the tiniest bit of merit in this discussion though, then you got the video to watch while you're eating your dinner, okay? Deal? Excellent. So for this video, I wanted to create a stat that effectively showed the value of a first-round pick by taking into account a player's age, health, and on-court production in the form of the LeBron stat, win share per 48 minutes, and value over a replacement player, or VORP. So I gathered all this data for every pick, first and second round, from the year 2015 to 2020. I started with 2015 because that was the year Steph won his first MVP and championship. So to me, it felt like this was the first time the league knew, okay, this three-point heavy style of play is the new zeitgeist, catch up or get left behind, it's time to start drafting differently. I chose 2020 as the last year for this data set because this is the last draft class I feel comfortable making any conclusions about. Even though it's kind of early, we kind of know Ant is a dog, we kind of know Killian Hayes is tracking to be a bust. I don't feel comfortable saying anything about Jalen Green or Jabari Smith quite yet. So you put all this together and you get a stat I like to call the sweat index. Now I won't go over the specifics of my equation because one, it's boring nerd shit you probably don't want to hear, and two, on the 3% chance this information is valuable, I need to keep the equation to myself. I'm sorry, I need to make some coin off this. So I won't show y'all my equation, but what I will do is show you guys how it ranks the top 20-ish players so y'all can judge for yourselves if this video is worth your time. Now this stat isn't good for comparing player to player. If you take in Cat over Halliburton or SGA, then you are frankly smoking on that good kush. And as with every advanced stat or stat in general, there are certain players that it just has an incomprehensible hard-on for. For instance, look up any advanced basketball metric you can think of, and I would bet my entire net worth that it is Dunkin' Donuts glazing Yakapurta like no other, and this stat is no different. So the sweat index does have its drawbacks, but this stat is still good at putting players in the same bucket. Sure, Domantas Sabonis isn't better than D-Book, but they both are in the same-ish tier of really good picks. And aside from like 3 or 4 exceptions, this stat is really good at placing players next to players of the same-ish value. There, my minute is up. Viewer, please stay and watch the video. I promise I'm kind of funny and moderately interesting. Oh, wait, really? Wow, I was not expecting that. Oh, okay. Stay with me, my man. Or woman, though that is very unlikely. You are a fan of the Detroit Pistons. If you are looking at the win total wondering how you are going to make the playoffs, you are either suffering from glaucoma or dementia. You are not getting excited at how far we're gonna get in the playoffs. You're getting excited watching Alexander Sarr and Nikola Topic highlights. Yes, we about to have Nikola Jovic, and Topic in the same league. Make your own jokes and stay with me. You probably have it in your head that this is it. This is the last year you guys are bad. We are gonna get this franchise changer and be championship contenders for the next 10 plus years. And you think my data would back this up. The team with the first pick in the draft has the ability to draft anyone they want. So the best player more times than not should be the first pick. No? It makes the most logical sense, doesn't it? If so, answer me this. What pick was Stephen Curry? Oh yeah, number 7. Where was KD drafted? Number 2. Devin Booker? Number 13. Giannis Antetokounmpo wasn't even drafted in the lottery. Jimmy Butler was barely drafted in the first round. Nikola Jokic was drafted so late that they was playing Taco Bell commercials while his name was being called. That is not a joke. If you go through each of the people that could feasibly be put in the top 10 players in the league conversation, there are only 3 that were drafted number 1 overall. 3. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and now Anthony Edwards. Even if you take it a step further and go through every year since LeBron James was drafted, there have only been 4 players, including LeBron, to be the best player on a conference finalist. All this is shown in my data. Everyone thinks they are getting a bona fide top 10 player in the league when they are drafting number 1 overall. And honestly, who can blame them when every year the NBA media is hyping up the new number 1 pick to be the best prospect since LeBron James? But when you look through the data, you aren't getting LeBron with the number 1 pick. You are getting OG Anunoby. You are getting Miles Bridges. You are getting Jaren Jackson Jr. All very good players, but these guys aren't franchise alterers. That may sound harsh, but look at the number 1 overall picks over this time span. Cat, whose value is very overrated by every advanced metric, including this one. Anthony Edwards, who, granted, looks to be the youngest of Michael Jordan's illegitimate children. But then you have DeAndre Ayton, who I'm pretty sure is the first face to be shown when you look up mid on Google, and then Zion Williamson, Markelle Fultz, and Ben Simmons, all players whose careers have been crippled by injury. They've all missed more games than they've played. And you know what? Despite all this mediocrity, this pick still produces the best players in the draft. Whether you're looking all time or just in the data set I was working off of while making the stat.
Actually, sir.
What?
I'm sorry, but the number 1 overall pick doesn't actually produce the best players in your data set.
That makes literally no sense. Then who would produce the highest overall value?
I think it's actually the number 3 pick.
Don't come at me with this ridiculous BS. How could the number 3 pick have better value than the number 1 pick? You're not wrong. From 2015 to 2020, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, LaMelo Ball, and RJ Barrett and Jahlil Okafor have all been drafted 3rd overall. In fact, if you go back to my previous discussion where I said 3 of the people that could feasibly be called a top 10 player in the league are number 1 picks, there are just as many number 3 picks that could also be called a top 10 player. In fact, I'd say Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, and Jason Tatum is a better trio than LeBron, AD, and Anthony Edwards, at least at this time. In fact, if you go all time, there are a lot of good players drafted number 3 overall. You know how there are only 4 players drafted number 1 since 2003 that have been the best player on a conference finalist? Guess how many were drafted number 3 overall? 5. 5 players to the number 1 pick's 4. So does this mean that the 3rd pick is more valuable than the 1st pick? It sounds counterintuitive, but I think weirdly yes, and let me explain why. If you look all time, the answer is a resounding no. I think like 80% of the players in the top 10 all time were 1st overall picks. Clearly, historically, the number 1 overall picks are better. But over the last 20 years, it has been the number 3. I think this is due to the rise in social media. The social media hype train surrounding the player mocked number 1 is so high that if a team even considers drafting someone else, their team's fan base would literally declare war on their front office. Take yourself back to 2019, when the hype train surrounding Zion Williamson had reached mythic proportions. You had bottom feeder franchise fans on their hands and knees begging, pleading, screaming to the heavens, please, just let this be the year. Please just give us Zion. Can you imagine the reaction from the Pelicans fan base when they were literally blessed with the number 1 overall pick if they went and got Ja Morant instead? Can you imagine the reaction of the Minnesota Timberwolves fan base if they traded for the number 1 pick and drafted some skinny dude from Cameroon who has an unhealthy love of Shirley Temples instead of the next Kobe Bryant? Both those teams' stocks would have halved before Adam Silver even uttered the players' last names. In the social media era, general managers don't get to explore. Often the pick is chosen for them. This is largely true for the 2nd pick as well. When it comes to the 3rd pick though, teams are allowed a little more leniency to consider every player mocked in the top 10 and aren't just forced to pick a player their fan base has been fantasizing about ever since the team got eliminated from the playoffs. So the 3rd pick then. The 3rd pick is what gives you that franchise carrier. What's the average value of a 3rd round pick equivalent to? Jalen Brunson, Jamal Murray, Desmond Bain, Jaylen Brown. Don't get me wrong, these are all very good players. All of them have a case to be made that they are top 25 players in the league. But if you're looking at the tippy top of your roster, the #1 player, and seeing Desmond Bain, I'm sorry, you're not talking trash to the other fan bases when the season starts. And these are just the top 3 picks in the draft. When you expand it to the entire lottery, it turned into straight spooky hours, no Aubrey. The maximum sweat index of a player who is a bust is 0.2. That doesn't mean there are no busts with a sweat index above 0.2. It just means I'm comfortable saying everybody with an index below 0.2 is a bust. And by bust, I don't mean they aren't all NBA, they aren't an all-star. By bust, I literally mean they are not a good NBA player. So out of the years 2015 to 2020, what percentage of lottery draft picks do you think are straight up bad? 27%. 27%! And this is excluding players like Killian Hayes, Mo Bamba, Jackson Hayes, Frank Kaminsky, and depending on your definition, the percentage of busts in the lottery of the NBA could jump as high as 33%. 1 out of 3 NBA players drafted in the highest section of the draft that aren't just not good for where they were drafted, they aren't good at all. Talk about a lottery. So taking all this into account, if the average player drafted at number 3 is Jamal Murray, an injury-prone number 2 on a championship contender, what do you think the average player drafted in the lottery is equivalent to? Devontae Graham, Daniel Gafford, Terrence Mann, all really solid role players at some time in their careers, but they are not altering a franchise. That's still not enough head-scratching news for you? What about this? The thing this entire stat was made for. What is the value of the average first-round pick? What is the average value of the thing that teams are placing their entire futures on? Sure, if you look at the success stories, it's for the chance to draft SGA or Halliburton or Kobe Bryant or Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh. If you look at the average value though, Landry Shamet, Precious Achiuwa, Grayson Allen. And I hear all of you talking saying that these players are still solid. Getting Landry Shamet on average in the first round isn't horrible. Getting Daniel Gafford or Terrence Mann on average in the lottery is decent. Getting Jalen Brunson as the 3rd overall pick is pretty good. And I think I would agree. The issue though is that this is not how the NBA media discusses first round picks, and this is not how NBA teams look at first round picks. After 3+ tumultuous years and a second trade request in 8 months, All-NBA forward Kevin Durant was traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Phoenix Suns for a package that includes dynamic forward Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, and 4 Precious Achiuwas, the team announced on Thursday. The Nets acquired James Harden from the Houston Rockets on Wednesday. In the trade, the Nets sent guard Karis LeVert and forward Rodions Kurucs, as well as 3 Landry Shamets and 4 Rashawn Holmeses to the Houston Rockets. Considered outliers to land the dynamic player for much of the offseason, the Cavs swooped in and put together a package for Donovan Mitchell. Cleveland sent guard Colin Sexton, forward Lauri Markkanen, and rookie guard Ochai Agbaji to Utah, along with 5 Grayson Allens. When you know the truth about the value of a first-round pick, these are the types of trades that are actually happening when these star players are getting sent to other teams. And don't get me wrong, they aren't horrible even when taking into account the actual value of a first-round pick. The issue is that the media, and I feel like NBA teams as well, choose to focus on the picks when they should be focusing on the talent. If I were an NBA GM, I would not be trying to get first-round picks in these trades. I would be seeing what first-round picks I could give up to get that one extra prospect, because proven young fringe all-star or high-level starter talent is exponentially more valuable than any first-round pick, even if it's guaranteed to be in the lottery. Why is that? Because drafting is extremely tough, and on top of that, relative to the rest of the NBA, there aren't a lot of teams that are good at it. Sure, maybe it behooves a team like the Raptors or the Spurs or the Heat or the Grizzlies or even the Lakers to focus on the first round picks in a trade, because they have shown the ability to consistently acquire viable NBA players in the draft. Teams like the Pistons, though, that not only over this time span, but for the last 20 years have never shown the ability to get decent NBA players in the draft, well, it's tough to see how they can bring themselves out of this hole without trading their picks for all-star level talent or a lifeline from the NBA, because the NBA draft is literal dumb luck. With that, thank you, my sweatshoppers, for your viewership. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Comment your point of view down below. Have a good day, and as always, stay sweaty, ladies and gentlemen. Before you leave, I'd ask you to stay a couple minutes just so I can thank a couple people that were imperative to this video. First, Krishna Narsu of B-Ball Index. His LeBron stat is one of the most widely used all-in-one advanced metrics in the business, so in the creation of our own stat, we wanted to use his as one of our data points. We messaged him asking if we could get his files so we could work off them, and he responded right away and gave us everything we needed and more. In the end, him sending his files when he really didn't have to cut down the time spent on this project from like multiple months to a few weeks. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, Krishna. Give the man a follow on Twitter and check out B-Ball Index's website. It's probably the best advanced stat database out there. Secondly, I would like to thank Michael McKelvey, whose video "You Will Never Look at the NFL Draft the Same" was the main inspiration for the video you are currently watching. If you are a fan of football or really sports in general, I cannot recommend this video enough. It's genuinely some of the best sports commentary I've ever seen on the platform. Thank you and have a good day.